Okay, I think we'll get started now. I've remembered to press record, so that's a good thing. Um, and I'd just like to welcome everybody to today's webinar, which I think January, which is our fifth session, including our kickoff session. Um, so back on track on the right date and time as advertised at the start of the year. Um, and so welcome everybody. The attendances still have been pretty good. We're managing to average, including the offices that I'm aware of who are showing it in the conference room, to manage an average just under 100. But even more interestingly, the webinars, the recordings are actually being watched by as many people who are attending live as well. So it looks like we're getting in front of maybe up to 200 people per session. I understand that some people may be watching the recordings afterwards as well, but hey, the more the better as far as I'm concerned. So thank you for attending. Thank you for taking the time to watch the recordings as well. So today's session, we're going to look at some drawing production skills today, techniques today. I did ask the last session what people would be interested in, and drawing production was something that I think everybody will be doing at some point or another, and we wanted to show the techniques available to produce working final presentation drawings. And everybody seemed to think that was a good idea, or certainly we didn't get too many dissenters when I asked last time. So again, introductions and housekeeping. I'm sure you know Mark and I by now. We'll tie this up inside the hour, hopefully. Mark and I did run through yesterday and it lasted a little bit longer, so we'll just have to talk quicker. Again, as I say, the recordings will be shared amongst you after probably tomorrow after the event. And as of course, any questions, we'll be monitoring the chat window as we go through. We can save the chat window for out of the session. So if we get any questions that we can't answer as we go through, then we'll pick them up afterwards. So as I say, one of us will be monitoring the chat window. Today, you've got me for the majority of the session. Mark, I did a sterling job last time, and it's my turn to take on the bulk of the work this time. So I'll be looking at drawing production to start with. Mark will be looking at drawing annotation a little bit later. The usual Bentley news and any other information that I have for you. I'm going to skip through the introductions and housekeeping and straight on to drawing production. What I'm going to cover today is the process of producing some drawings. So we look at named boundaries, sheet seed files, and then we'll just quickly run through and create some plan profiles, cross sections, and plan and profiles. It's worth pointing out there's lots of really good drawing production information on the Learn server as well, and I'll show you where that is as well. And as I say, hopefully we'll give you some ideas on the terminology. For those that have used MX in the past, you know, this is all functionality that you could do inside of MX, producing drawings. And actually, I think it's better, quicker, cleaner, more reusable, and just a little bit more up-to-date technology. So without further ado, I am going to go into my OpenRose Designer session. Again, this is all live, so as you see it, I will be doing it as you see it. And we have him here. It's a simple road. The fact that we've just shown some drawings, it really doesn't matter how complicated the design is here. So I've just got a simple alignment with a corridor and some end conditions, earthworks, etc., etc. So with a profile on it, and we've got a 3D model view displayed. So it's a multi-model view. The reason will become apparent shortly. So, drawing production, how do we do it? Where do we get to it? So under the Open Roads modeling workflow, there's a drawing production tab along here. And this is where we're going to be doing most of our work. And really, it's these few tabs here, named boundaries and annotations. I'll be looking at the named boundaries section, and Mark will be looking at annotation. So well, let's jump straight into it then. Plan, profile, cross-section. They're the kind of drawings that we want to produce. So I'll quickly jump into named boundaries, and we just click on the named boundaries here, and I'll explain a little bit about this dialog panel first off. So this is where we create our civil named boundaries. Named boundaries are something that's been in MicroStation for a long time, but we're using specifically civil ones here. And really, it's just creating a boundary for information that we want to show in our drawing. If we scroll through the top, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different methods of creating our named boundaries. I'm not going to cover all of them. Some of them are more useful than others, but I'm just going to cover mainly the civil plan. So a civil plan allows you to create a named boundary on a plan and draw whatever is in that named boundary. Civil plan by element, I'm not going to show. Effectively, if you have a CAD element or a MicroStation element, you can use that to create your named boundary. Civil profile, which we're going to have a look at. Civil cross sections, which we're going to have a look at. Civil cross section 2 points, I'm not going to show that, but that's useful for things like doing skewed sections, so you can just pick 2 points, or you can use a line that you've already got created. And the other ones are for using CAD features, either 2 points or polygons, to create your named boundary. But as I say, I'm not going to cover those ones. The only one that I've used in the past is a civil cross section 2 points, and that's for example, if I want to take cross sections through a skewed bridge deck or something like that, and you can add those to your section set. So let's have a look at this panel first. We'll come back to drawing seed file in actually no, let's go to drawing seed file first. The drawing seed file is how the drawing is actually set up. So we supply some examples of the drawing seed files, and if I use the pull down here, we'll see all the ones that are available for plan. So there's plan, which is a single plan on a sheet. And then there's a plan, which is a plan above and a plan below. And then there's plan profile, which you might look at if we get time. And there's one that I've created myself. You may wonder where these come from. Well, they are in the configuration file. I'm using the civil metric workspace. So the civil default standards metrics.cfg configuration file is the file that we would use it's more than just setting up drawings. There's lots of information here, and that seed file is under that config file is under program data, Bentley, Open Roads Designer Connect Edition, configuration, organization, civil, and you see down here all the config files that I have for the workspaces that I have installed, and this is the one I'm going to be using, the metric.cfg, and that's standard Open Roads Designer functionality. You can, of course, custom those. You can custom anything here in Open Roads Designer to point anywhere, be it to a network location or using a managed workspace with ProjectWise as well. I'm all standalone here, and the variable is msdgnliblist, and the DGN libs that it's going to load are are in this location: DGN organization standards, DGN lib sheet seeds / DGN lib, and all of these drawing seed files are stored in the various DGN lib lists. DGN libs that we have. If you're using Open Roads Designer, you'll get familiar with DGN libs because all our standard stuff that you use, feature definitions, text styles, etc., etc. All of these can be stored in DGN libs for your organisation and are then loaded into your design file as you work through it. I'm not going to go into too much detail about DGN libs, but we point to a DGN lib list. That's the variable you use, and it points to a particular location for all your DGN libs. There are some other bits and pieces in the configuration file which deal with drawings as well, particularly cross-sections drawings. I'm only going to mention, I'm not going to change any of those, but if we scroll down a bit, we'll see there's something on, not terrain, cross-section and sheet spacing and margin settings. So there's information in here on how to set up sheet and cross-section sheet and margin settings. And for example, whichever way you want the sections to go, be it up and down across the page. For those of you familiar with line mode, it's the command in the macro to either put cross sections up or down or left to right. So there's lots of information that you can set in the configuration file as well to set up your cross sections. But we want to look back at this particular location here, and I'll quickly, I'm not going to spend too long on this, but if we go down to that particular location that was in the config variable, organization civil, civil standard metric, DGN lib, sheet seed files. These are all the sheet seed files that you have, and you can set inside of these, you set up a view that you want, and I'll just show you what I mean by that. I'm just going to close that down and browse to, if I can remember where it is, organizational civil, civil design metric, DGN lib, sheet seeds, and let's look at plan sheet definitions, DGN lib. That one will do, I think. And if we open that up, we'll just see what's in this DGN lib, and you can see here that in the DGN lib is how the drawing is going to look. The actual name of it, the name of the view that we saw in our named boundary, comes from the model. So there's a model set up in there, which includes a saved view of the same name, so A1 plan, and that's where the actual name of the sheet seed comes from. So all of this is set up. You create your DGN lib for your particular organisation. Ours is the standard frame here, but you know, all of the organisations will have their standard frames, and this is done. And you can either do it a couple of ways. You can either create a cell out of your frame and attach it to this particular cell, which I think, if we look here, annotation cell is how it's done in this particular DGN lib, or you can reference in a drawing which you already have for your frame, and it can be a DWG as well. I think, again, there's a variable which tells ORD where to look for these, and the default it stores them in is sheet borders under the sheet border. So you can see here there's a DWG. We've got a couple of so if I'd have looked at the profile and profile there's a DWG that was referenced in, but in this case I think we've got a cell library for this particular option. I'm not going to go into any much more detail here on how to create these, because it's more of an admin function than a user function. But if you do want to know, on the Learn server, there is some really detailed information on Quick Start for Open Roads Designer drawing production, and if you go down under the hood, setting up sheets in Open Roads Designer, configuring annotation in Open Roads Designer, setting up drawing seeds, and setting up annotation. So these, if you want to be involved in this kind of thing, these are These are some really good. It's what I used actually to start the preparation for this. So these are this is a really good learning path to have a look at. Okay, so I've just explained a little bit about how all of the seed sheets are pulled into our drawings. I'm just going to run through and create some drawings for us now to have a look at and show how relatively simple it is to get some good standard drawings out. So back to our named boundaries dialog. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the named boundaries for plan, profile and cross-section first, and then go through and create each of the drawings individually. Again, as I say, this is only my personal preference how to work, but it is functionality. It is a workflow that produces good, quick, and easy results. A lot of it is in the setup, so but once you've got things set up how you like it, it works reasonably quickly. So the drawing seed file. Remember, we looked at the drawing seed files. So there were in the DGN libs, the setup DGN libs. There's plan. There's plan, and there's plan profile. I'm just going to create some plans in the first instance. I'm going to use most of the defaults, to be fair. I know they work, but I'll explain what they all are. So I'm leaving the default scale as 1 to 500. I'm going to give it a description of plan. You can create multiple boundary groups. So, for example, if you've got more than one road on a DGN, you can create different groups for the different pieces of geometry. And then, so I'm just going to select my geometry description. I put plan in there, and then we can specify start and end changes if we wish, or I'm just going to do start and end chainage. The rest of the options on here, the length of this is taken really from the length of the the length of the sheet that you have here. You can change it if you wish, but just be careful. If you make it too long, then the drawing might come out the end of the frame. And if it's too short, then you're going to end up with more sheets than you probably really need. So the default, it knows what size drawing sheet you're using, so it will default to the best size that there is there. There is an option, there is a little measure tool here that you can actually measure distances, and that applies to left and right offsets as well. But as I say, I'm just going to leave those as the defaults. And if I data point, you'll see it sets up our sheets according to our drawing seed on our piece of geometry that we've chosen. So there we go. That's our sheets layout really done. I'm going to just put in an overlap. I like having an overlap in my drawings. So I'm going to overlap it by 20, and you see we now get a little bit of an overlap. We haven't created the name boundaries yet because they still disappear, and we can go and fiddle around with any of the values that we want here at the moment. So we haven't actually created them yet. There is a create drawing checkbox that you can check, which just takes you straight through and creates your drawings immediately. I'm going to leave that unchecked because I want to come back and do all the name boundaries before we go and create any drawings. So simple data point there, and it creates our name boundaries. And if we go to this dialog here, named boundary groups, we'll see now that under plan groups we have a plan named boundary. So that's name boundaries for plans done. The process really is the same for profiles and cross sections. The only couple of gotchas you need when you're creating your profile named boundaries, you need to have a profile drawing displayed. I think that's a bit obvious really, but it caught me out once or twice when I first started using this. So you do have to have a profile displayed, and when you're creating cross sections as well, name boundaries, you have to have a 3D model displayed as well. That also caught me out. It does give you a warning message out here if you don't, and you just have to turn on a 3D model. So there are a couple of gotchas for the for creating the sectional drawings. So back into named boundaries again, and moving along to civil profile. I'm just going to use the A1 profile frame annotation, and again, these are all pulled in from our DGN libs, from the named views and the models in our DGN lib that I talked about a few minutes ago. And I say the rest of it I'm going to leave as default. There are a couple of methods. You can either use station limits or from a plan group. The good thing about using it from a plan group means it ties in the plan and the profile named groups. And I'm going to pick my geometry here on my profile. Again, we haven't created it yet because there are several other options that we can have a look at. And it says, gives you a description, vertical exaggeration if you want to put a vertical exaggeration. And there are some values here that it has a best guess at given the sheet that you're drawing, seed that you're using, and the information from the profile that you have here. So it looks at available profile height and any top and bottom clearances. Of course, you can override these if you wish, and any element datum spacing and a station datum spacing. So that's a section across the datum across the bottom. You can actually shift the sections as well if you want. If, for example, if the sections aren't matching up, I'm not going to in this case. I'm going to leave it as the default. And you can also turn terrains on as well, which means that if you turn terrains on, then it tries to include as much of the terrain as possible as well. You see here, in certain cases, we haven't got part of the terrain on our section. But I'm just going to use the defaults. Again, we can create the drawing, or we can just create the name boundary, which I'm going to do in this case. So there's our profile name boundaries created, and I'm just going to complete the process and do our cross-section name boundary as well. Again, exactly the same. You pick a seed file, a drawing sheet seed file, again loaded from the DGN lib, and fill in the blanks really. So I put in our geometry, pick our geometry, and pick our start and end points. And you see, as soon as we click on start and end points, it gives us all the section places it's going to create the name boundary. That's too many because it does take a little bit of time processing. I'm going to put an interval of 100 in instead, and you see it now creates them every 100 meters. Again, top and bottom clearances for you to have a little play around with, and of course left and right offsets. You can measure those as well if you feel you need to expand it a little bit. Just be careful about how wide you make them according to the size of the sheet that you're using. There is a little bit of trial and error involved, but then again, when you were using input files in MX, there was always a bit of trial and error involved in getting your sections looking correct. And again, we can go straight through to the create drawings. Oh, you can include control points as well. So if you created any control points in your geometry, so rather than just having the regular chainage, you can use any control points if you created on your geometry as well. And so I'm just going to hit data point to accept, and it creates our named boundaries, and you can see it's got them on our 3D model as well. Just one thing to point out here, what we could have done if we want to create the named boundary group is for the cross sections is that name here, but we could also have added a skewed section somewhere along as well if we wanted, and you can actually type in a chainage as well and add, so you can have odd chainage intervals, so you can just keep adding to the same named boundary group, and it'll put in skewed special chainages, etc., etc. So all the stuff that you could do in MX you can do by adding special chainages or adding individual section locations. Okay, so that's the setup of it really. If we go back to our named boundary groups now, we can see here that we've got one for plan, one for profile, and one for cross sections. And it's simply a case now of running these named boundaries. And as I say, we could have created the drawings automatically, but I quite like, I wanted to create all the, rather than nipping back and forth, I wanted to just create the name boundary first and then go through, create the drawings afterwards. And there's a bit of dialogue to show as well here. So if we click on our plan groups, we'll see it's highlighted and all these options become available at the top. And if we expand our plan group, you'll see it has all the drawing production. I've been through this a few times, which is why the plans, the sheet index plans are a little bit off. You can reset it. I've just forgotten to in this case, but it's 61, 62 rather than 1, 2, 3. But I say I've been through preparing. I've been through this a few times. So so you can see it has all the sheets that we've created, and we know how many there are in this particular group. I'll just and also if there's a profile group linked to it as well, it shows what that is as well. So that's quite handy to have. So I'm just going to take that back up, and we can see. So we've picked up our plan group, and I'm now going to. There's a dialog here which is show the create drawing dialog. If we just hit create plan drawing now, it'd go off and create the plan drawings, and it'd use a lot of the default values we've set up in our sheet file. But what you can do is you can show the create drawing dialog, which I like to use because there's some options in there we can have a look at. So hitting that button, we then go to create plan drawing, and this brings up the create drawing dialog box. The mode here is plan, which you can't change. A lot of this is for information only. We could type in a name if we wanted to there, but a lot of this is for information only. It does give us the option of changing our drawing seed if we want, and it just tells us this is a view type is a civil plan, the discipline is civil, etc., etc. When you go through that, one thing I didn't go into any great detail about, but it's worth mentioning when about the training is this process actually creates two models. It creates a drawing model and a sheet model. So a drawing model is just a section through the drawing itself, the model that we've got, the 3D model that we've got, and the sheet model uses the sheet seed that we've chosen, and pulls in all of the information we actually want to put on the sheet. So that's a sheet model. This is gone into in a little bit more detail in the Learn Server training, but the basic thing you need to know is to get two models out of this: a drawing model and the final sheeted model. And the sheeted model the drawing model is referenced into the sheeted model. So you always, whenever you're updating anything or annotating, you annotate the drawing model or you update the drawing model, and it's automatically referenced into the sheet model. We'll see in a second exactly what's created. The rest of it is pretty much read only. I mean, for information, there's what you've already chosen. You can go ahead and change any of the things in here, but just be a little bit careful because it has a best go at what it thinks should be used. One thing to mention is by default it will create these drawing and sheet models in the active DGN, the active file. So the DGN that we're on at the moment is called Drawing Production, and it will create, by default, it will create the sheet and drawing models in that file. Now, I don't particularly like to work like that because it gets a bit messy. You get all your section drawings, section models inside of your design model. So we're given the option here of actually creating a new drawing file. And that's the way I like to work. So for plans, I'll simply create a drawing called plan. And now it's going to save all my drawing and sheet models, assuming I change that to pick the plan as well, to a separate DGN. Assuming I don't want to change anything else, I've got a checkbox here which says open model, so it's going to open up plan.dgn. Off I go, and it simply runs through the commands and opens up our new plan.dgn, and we have our model views, which drawing views, model views, drawing models, which are here, and referenced into that are our sheet views, which are here. So this is where it pulls in the frame. The sheet views are where it pulls in the frame from the sheet seed that we've chosen. There's very little annotation on here, but Mark's going to cover that, assuming I shut up in time. Okay, so it's as simple as that. That's some plan views, and as you can see, they're all in scaled up, and they're all inside of our drawing frame. I'm just going to go through and repeat. So back to our plan drawing. Back to our main drawing production drawing, and it should pull up loads back up our profile, our named boundary groups, and I'm just going to repeat the process again. If we expand it, all the sheets are on there, and I'm going to show the drawing dialog because I want to create the profile drawing. So profile mode is profile, drawing seed, and I'm going to create a new profile design file and load up that as well. To be honest, I think there should be a checkbox to say use the same one that you've typed up there. Why would you want your sheet model? I don't know, but it gives you the option anyway. And again, I'm just going to use the defaults for everything else, and away we go. And fingers crossed it's going to load up our profiles, and open up profile.dgn, and fingers crossed we'll get, there we go. So in this case we've got some nice annotation which Mark's going to cover, and we've got a profile drawing, and we've got all our drawing views, zoom extents, and then we've got our sheet views with it all sheeted up with our annotation on the bottom. As I say, these are some standards that we produce, but you're obviously going to want to do your own drawings, scales, etc., etc. Again, I realise I'm getting a bit tight for time, and there's a couple of other things I want to show you. So back to our plan, our composite model, and we'll just finish off by doing cross sections and show the dialog again, and create the cross section drawing, and it pulls us up, and this time it's a cross section, and just for completeness I'm going to create a new drawing and save my sheet, my drawing and sheet models in the same place. Again, off I go, and cross sections takes a little bit of time sometimes, so hence why I only took, well, see there's 34 sheets it's going to annotate, that it's going to display here, hence why I only took it at 100 meter sections, not 20 meter sections. It's the annotation that takes the time, but as I say, I think it's a fairly simple process to go through, and if you need to do it more than once, then it doesn't take too long. As I say, just be aware that cross sections do take a little bit of time to do, and if you've got 20 kilometers of road, it is going to be a bit time consuming. So I know we are working on improving performance. So there we have our cross section views. If we look at our drawing, I think there's some down here. So there's a drawing view of it, and if we look at that particular chainage, it's clever enough to know that it can fit 2 sections on that particular drawing size. So that's the cross section, and as you see, there's boxes proposed, existing elevation, offsets, etc., all annotated quite nicely, and that's something that hopefully Mark will show you. Just back to our drawing, final drawing, drawing production there. So I just want to show you. You can actually tidy these up quite nicely. So once you've finished with it, you can either keep it or you can delete your name boundaries, and it tells you that it's got some saved views, which are the views we've already created. Actually, I'm just looking. I have got time. I just wanted to show you plan profiles as well, because there's something that a lot of people are interested in. So for plan profiles, we just go through the same process, but we have to use the same drawing seed for both the plan and the profile. So in this case, it's A1 plan profile, but this is the plan bit. And again, pick my geometry and start and end chainage and create the name boundaries. There we go. And through the name boundaries again, remember A1 plan profile plan section, and for profile it's going to be A1 plan file profile section in capitals. And we'll take it from the plan group. I'm going to uncheck use terrains and pick up profile, and I'm going to do not shift. We don't want to shift it in this case because we want to match up our plan and our profile, and there's no overlap either. I didn't put an overlap in. So simply click on that to create our named views, named boundaries, and again go through the same process. We have plan profile group, we have a plan group and a profile group, and you'd simply show the create drawing dialog and create. See, we have an option of create plan profile drawing, and it brings us up hopefully a bigger dialog. So plan profile, and this asks us where we want to put the drawing models for both the sheets and the for both the civil plan, which is here, and the civil profile, which is here. So again, I'm just going to create a plan profile DGN and save everything in there, and also the sheet model plan profile. Remember, there's only one sheet model in this case because we're going to put the plans and the profiles on the same sheet model, drawing models on the same sheet model. And again, just double check that we've got everything, hit OK on that, and away we go, and it should create some plan profile drawings. Fingers crossed. It's been giving me a few problems recently, but hopefully, there we go. So we can see here we have each of the sheets. We have our drawing view of our profile. We have our drawing view of our plan, and then we have our sheet view with both of them tied in together. Okay, I think that's me done. I'm going to mute myself, and Mark, do you want to take over? I've left you about 20 minutes.
Okay.
So I've muted myself. Yeah, we can see. We can see your display, Mark.
Okay, perfect. So hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about annotating your drawings. The objective today is to introduce you to the annotation tools, and such as place label, element annotation, and model annotation. which you can use for your profile, your plants, and your cross sections. Then we're going to see the annotation definitions, how they work, and also how to use the annotation manager, and how we can link annotation groups to feature symbologies. Finally, we're going to talk about the text favorites, what they are, and how to create and use them. Okay, so let's start at first with the annotate horizontal alignments. So this one, I use the UK workspace. So this one, you can use it with the delivered UK dataset. And you can choose to annotate your alignments in two ways. You can decide to annotate it while creating your alignment, or after it has been completed and using the drawing productions element annotation or model annotation. First thing, I will show you how to create the annotation while creating the alignment. You need first to display the feature definition toolbar, and here you can select the feature definition you want to use for your alignment. Let's try with the geom baseline. Check the to activate the feature definitions, and don't forget to activate also the automatic annotation. Once this is done, you can create your alignment. Let's try by complex by PI. Here I put a radius of 500 with some spirals of 500, and if I start to draw my alignment and I right click to finish it, you would see that my alignment is automatically annotated, and this will automatically update with if you modify your alignment. Let's say, for instance, you want to change the scale. You want to put in 1000, for instance. So the size will be adjusted. Or if you need to modify your alignment, like now you don't need anymore 500 but 200. All the alignments is following, and even if you move some elements, everything is following. So like this, you can automatically annotate your alignment, or you can do it later on. So if we go in drawing productions, we have here our main tools, so the place label, element annotation, and this one, the model annotation. The difference are that with the annotate element, obviously you just can annotate one element at a time. So let's say, for instance, I want to annotate this alignment. I select it, right click, and it will automatically find the annotation group attached to these feature definitions. That are one of the settings I will show you later. You can also decide to annotate the model. It's you already have different annotation groups delivered with the software, so with the workspace. So let's, for instance, have a look at how it comes. You have the possibility to choose here the annotation group. You have this window and different options depending on what you want to do. Let's say that we want to display the slope signatures on our corridor. We can select it. Say that we want just to annotate this model with this annotation group, and validate. This one takes a bit of time, but yes, now we can see we have all tadpoles on our corridor, so you can annotate it in this way. And the last things you can do is to place individual labels. So the window, so the dialog comes in this way. You have the possibility to choose between a label with a leader or without. You have two types of labels. It can be a cell or text favorite. We'll talk more about the text favorite later. And just for information, if you want to know where are these cells, in the delivered UK workspace, they are located here, so organization civil, UK standards, cell, and you can find them here. So for cross sections, plan view, profiles, all of them are here. You can open them and see how they are. But basically, they are text favorites included inside cells. So the principle is quite simple. Then you can choose what kind of annotation you want to make. So for the plans, you have several choices at the moment, but you can also customize them and you can create a new one if you need. So label plans, and also you will have for the profiles, for the cross sections. So for the first one, let's try this one, the stations, so chain age and offset. Okay, first I will finish to show you the different options. So you can choose the dimension style. If you want to rotate your label horizontally, vertically, or in line. Also, how to define it from the terminator or from the placement, and the type of alignment you want it. For these options, I will show you the differences between them, so you can lock the scale in case you decide you need to change several times your scale, and you can associate the label to the element you are annotating or not. So you can deactivate these, and you can choose if the position of the label is relative to the element you're annotating or not. If I create one element, so let's imagine that here we have a building, and we want to know the offset and stainage of the corners. We can use the labels. So this one. And first we need to select the alignments we want to use as a reference. So this one. And then we can click on our corners. So at first I will let everything activated. I select this one. I deactivate the association. I activate it, but I don't want it to be a relative position. And in this way, I've done my 3 points. Now, if I move, I need to move or modify these elements, this rectangle. You can see that, so this one, the point is still the same. It's not associated anymore with the rectangle. This one, the position of the label shifted with the rectangles, and in this one, the label stayed at the same place. So like this, you can really decide how to set your labels. It's really flexible. And you can also remove all your annotations, so one by one, if you prefer, or completely on all the models, so for the tadpoles, for instance. Made a mistake. Yeah, it wasn't removing. Here we go. You can also go in the drawing models. If we go, for instance, in plan, you would be also able to place your labels here if you want them to be aligned with the view. Here and there, so it doesn't make any difference. So at least it's aligned with the drawing. You can exactly use the same tools with your profile. For instance, if I go here, I can annotate points, like also use a station. But this one, let's take the one in the profile. So you have station and elevation. So you can use the labels here in the same way that in plan. You can also remove the model annotation, and apply a new one if you need. So here the same thing. If you need to choose a different one, you will have all the choices available displayed. So I will keep the UK style, and you can decide to annotate all the drawing models of for the profiles or just this one. Okay. Here we go. And for the cross sections, it's pretty much the same process. You can go, yeah, and you can remove the existing. You can place a label, and for instance, in the cross sections here, offset. And if you need to annotate this point, for instance, you can have it, and you can annotate again your drawing. Here we go. Okay, now about these annotation definitions. So basically what they are so they are stored in the DGN library with the feature definitions. If you go in the libraries, you can see them. You can use the delivered example as a starting point, and if you, for instance, you decide to tweak them or to modify them, you will also have the possibility to export them in a new DGN files or DGN libraries. So here they are. And when you use them, the best way to use the Explorer is to go back in the default model. And here you can see. Okay. Let's close it and open it again. Okay, here we can see. So the annotation definitions are referenced into the annotation groups. So here you can see the different definitions we have, note, plan, and they will be used inside the annotation groups. And if you have something to reference in an annotation group, so let's say if I go in the plan grid, and you make a change, it is also included in other. If these annotation definitions are included in other annotation groups, and you modify one of them, it will be also modified in all the groups in which they are included. So be careful with it. So if you want to see if I go in the annotation manager, here it looks like. So if you can see here, we can't really see anything. Is because you need to change the scale of the drawing. So let's say we want to 120. Let's open it again. So here we can see on the right we have this window showing what it looks like, our annotation definitions with the different values. And if I decide, let's find one that contains more information. If I go in the profile, UK style, for instance. Here we go. You can see that all the information that is contained in your annotation groups here. So on the right, the different annotation definition, what they contain. So you can see here the different information at the bottom here in the frame, and also the grid here. Here you can also you can also change all of this here in this information. I don't want to talk too much about how to tweak and to modify the annotations because it's already talked about. If you go on the Learn server, there is a session about it, so you can find it, and if you need, it's quite useful. And The last thing is how you can link these annotation groups to your feature definitions. So the feature definitions are here, and they refer to the feature symbologies. So basically, in your feature definitions, you will need to choose a feature symbologies, and in these feature symbologies, you can go in the properties and say that I want my annotation group by default to be the UK chain H. For instance, you can change it here if you create a new one and you want to apply it to it. And like this, by default, you will choose this one. Then the last thing is the text favorite, which are what we use to build our label throughout the product. It's based on MicroStation platform technology and Open Roads. So let's open it. If you go, okay. So if you go in, you can access it from the place table text. And Open Roads has civil-based properties in it. Okay, that's it. Let's open a new one. So like this I can finish. So the idea of the text favorite is if you have some pieces of text that you need to place in different places, you can just save it and use it when you need it. So in this case, you can use a static piece of text and save it as a text favorite. Or you can also insert fields that will read the information contained in the different elements. And in the case of Open Roads, you can choose in, for instance, your plan, profile, or cross sections to display some information. Once it will be open, I will be able to show you if the time allows.
We are getting to the top of the hour, Mark. What we'll do is we'll keep finishing it with the recording, so it'll be in the recording. But as I say, I know everybody needs to shoot off. So Mark, keep doing it, and we'll finish the record. We'll include it in the recording. So before everybody disappears, I just wanted to note one thing. Next month, we were due to have the webinar on the 25th of May, I believe. In the UK, that's half term, or it certainly is around a lot of the UK. So I'm going to push it by a week to the 6th of June. I'm off on leave on the 25th of May, so we're going to push it by a week. I've just mentioned this at the bottom of the PowerPoint. So I'll include the PowerPoint when I send out the recording as well. So just be aware, get it in your diaries. The next one will be the 6th of June. Mark, do you want to carry on?
Yes. So here we go. So we are in the text editor. You have here the text favorites, and you can open the manager here. And inside, it will give you access to all the text favorites available in the DTN libraries. So here are they are. And also in the drawings. So by default, all the ones used by the ORD are copied inside the drawing. And you have the ability to create a new one. Right-click on the drawing, add. Let's give it a name, test. And here you have the text editor. You can put some pieces of text. So for instance, let's say chain H, and you can insert a field on the bottom and choose from the different elements available. So let's say we want the chain H, so it will be a plan element annotation field, a linear one, and a point station. once we can also choose the different formats or the different options. We can decide to put a comma instead of a plus. And once we're happy with it, we can just accept, and it will copy inside the text editor. We can, at the end, we save it. Don't forget to choose a style, and let's take this one. Save again, and then you will be able to use it on your plan here. So if we want to place a label, text favorite, test, and we select our alignment, and here we are. And that's it. Okay. Okay, Simon, I think I finished with to show for the text favorites. So
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Mark. Sorry, it was a bit rushed at the end there, everybody. It's typical. You know, we try and fit a lot in. What this is meant to be is a demonstration of the things that you can do inside of OpenRose Designer, not particularly a training session. So, as I mentioned, there are stuff on the Learn server that you can go and have a look at in more detail. But as I say, that gives you an idea of the kind of drawings you can produce: plans, profiles, cross sections, plan profile, composite drawings, and Mark showed you a bit about annotation as well. There's lots more in there, believe me, there's lots more, particularly in the annotation text favorite, annotation group side of things. I can only urge you to go and have a look at that learning path that I showed on the Learn server, and if there's call for it, we can certainly go into the annotation a little bit more at another session. As I say, bear in mind, due to half term, we're going to make the next session on the 6th of June, and hopefully we'll be able to do roundabouts this time. Actually, we promised you that this month, but it's something we need to work on. It gives us a bit more time. So with that, thank you for attending. There's a couple of people I've got to contact offline afterwards. Feel free to drop us a line, and I'll make the recordings available very soon. So thank you for your time, and have a good afternoon.